Hello everyone, my name is Christia Houghton and this is a data overview over the end of the year math assessment at Riverside Primary. The purpose of this data overview is to review students' proficiency rate in the end of the year math between Latinos and African Americans. This review will determine steps towards improving student proficiency in math through the CTLS assessment. This data will help teachers identify their strengths and weaknesses of each end-of-the-year assessment taken over the last 4 school years. Identifying these obstacles will determine what both teachers and students need to master the content area of math with technology. We will review the demographics. We will review math proficiency between African Americans and Latino students on a school, county, and state level. We will then determine steps towards improving student proficiency, develop strategies to improve professional development, identify strengths in assessment, identify weakness in assessment, possible solutions, and at the end, we will have questions. The data resources are the CCRPI provided from the Georgia Department of Education and Riverside Primary Strategic Plan. Riverside Primary demographics. The demographic of the entire school of Riverside Primary is a Title I public school based in southwest of Cobb County. Every day, teachers and other staff members are accountable of closing the achievement gap between high and low performing students by ensuring the students have a fair and equal opportunity to obtain a high quality education. The school holds 626 students. Of those students, 56% are African Americans, 43% are Latinos, and 1% are of other ethnicities. There are 41% of students that receive assistance from ESOL or ELL, and there are 1% of students that have been identified with a disability. At Riverside Primary, we have grades K and 1. Out of those grades, we have 1 male teacher and 40 female teachers. Here is a pie chart of the years. Here's a pie chart that shows the amount of years those teachers have been teaching their whole time. You can see here at the bottom that there's a table, 0 to 1 years, we have about 2%, 2 to 5 years, 9%, 6 to 10 years, 24%, 11 to 15 years, 29%, and 16 or more years, we have about 36% teachers. Now that we covered the information of the school, let's reiterate our focus. The following slides will present the demographic data from Riverside Primary, Cobb County, and the state of Georgia. We will focus on the last 4 years, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. Here you will see a disaggregated data of race at a state level using the College and Career Readiness Performance Index, also known as CCRPI. Here's another part that is the district. You can see that out of the district in about 2015, there are 26.2% African American, 12.8% Latino, 52.9% white, 5.1% Asian, and 2.8% of others. Moving on to Riverside Primary, you can see that these numbers have drastically decreased. In 2015, there were 54.5% African American, 43% Latino, 1% white, 0.3% Asian, and 0% other. As you can see, Riverside Primary has a large population of the African American and Latino community. Moving on to our transient rate of students at Riverside Primary, you can see in 20, well, this is not Riverside Primary, I'm sorry. This is for Riverside Primary, the county, and the state. So all three will be discussed in this table. You can see in 2013, 5% of state, 5% of the transient students in 2013 was at 5%. The county was at 16%, and Riverside was 35%. Moving down to 2016, at the state level, 6%, at the county level, 13%, and at Riverside, 51%. So if we're just focusing on Riverside right now, you can see that the transient rate has increased over the 4 years that we're discussing. So between the 4 years that we will discuss, Cobb County introduced a new formative assessment in 2015 called CTLS. All students participated in this assessment. Before this change took place, there was a benchmark assessment shared amongst the primary grades K through 1. This benchmark was given at the end of the year to see how much students learned throughout the year. This data presented shows the proficiency performance on the math benchmark for the first 2 years of both African American and Latino students. So here on the side, L is for Latino in 2014, AA is African American for 2014. And you can see as these students performed in 2014 and 2013, their percentages were 50% or higher. This next table shows the last 2 years that included the new CTLS that was used to assess students. So for 2016, Latinos, they scored at the county level, 29%, and at Riverside Primary, 32%. And in 2016, they scored at the county level, 33%, and at Riverside Primary, 44%. And for the Latinos in 2015, they scored 27% and 31% at county and at RVP level. And African Americans in 2015 scored 31% at county level, and at RVP they scored at 42%. So with the introduction of the CTLS, the students actually performed below 50%. Here's a side-by-side view of all 4 years. The process of assessing and end-of-the-year assessment stayed the same, but the quality of the test changed. Students went from paper and pencil for the benchmark that was guided with pictures and familiar words and strategies students were taught throughout the year. For years 2015 and 2016, a new assessment was given to students, the CTLS. This assessment did not involve paper and pencil, but a remote control or clicker. Students were presented with multiple choice questions that could be given teacher and student pace. Teachers were also trained on the new system at the end of 2014 before the assessment was actually given. Some of the strengths and weaknesses of the CTLS. For the strengths, there was a high student engagement. It was very hands-on. It was a hands-on assessment, and there was direct feedback. Some of the weaknesses that was observed for the CTLS, there was a lack of readiness from the students, distraction of the remotes to lower level students. The students took it more as a toy, not as a tool, and teachers lacked the knowledge of the program. A lot of them did not know how to use the CTLS and still had trouble using it throughout their classroom. Some of the solutions that can possibly improve the proficiency is to provide one-to-one CTLS training with classroom teacher to reassure the implementation of using the remotes for assessing students. Provide quicker feedback to assure teachers' understanding. Collaborate with staff members on possible interpretation of CTLS assessments, and create practice time for students to familiarize themselves with the remotes. So now what? So now that we've collected our data for the past 4 years, it's clear to say that African American students scored higher than our Latino scholars. Because of the change in the way students were assessed, their scores decreased. Students did not perform successful the last 2 years, but were introduced to a new source that changed the dynamic of the assessing. Here are some questions we can ask ourselves for future reference. Was there enough professional development time for teachers to gain a better understanding of the new assessment tool, CTLS? Were teachers supported while transitioning to the new assessment? Is language an issue to communicate with our Latino students, or is there language options through the CTLS? How do we close the gap between English and non-English speakers? Did we excel at implementing the strategy to students that involved using a remote? Did we properly guide students and allow practice time to interact with the remotes? What actions can be put in place to build student proficiency over the CTLS assessment? And these are the resources. The resources that were used were from, that was stated earlier, school grades at georgia.gov, excuse me, and the gosa.georgia.gov.